Today we're joined by our guest, Dr. Dewayne Bryant, who's here today to talk about the historicity of King David. A very important subject. You've done a lot of work on this. You have a great interest in it.
When looking at David, so many people see him as this kind of mythological or legendary figure. The life of David is not implausible in any way. It's absolutely believable historically. Well, and this is actually where the Bible sort of stands out, because when you look at biography of ancient Near Eastern kings and accounts of their military campaigns and things like that, a lot of it's actually filled with magic and sometimes propaganda, and you rarely ever see the king looking bad. And so with David, it's like, one of the biggest stories is his sin with Bathsheba. That immediately sets the Bible apart from so many of these other accounts.
Yes. Where David's career sort of gets off to a start, and that is his encounter with Goliath. What's your insights on that?
And I think if we actually look at the text, what we're going to see is this is anything but some little kid going out to defeat a seasoned warrior. This is actually something that has the ring of truth about it. And I actually wrote an article about this that was in Bible and Spade, all the things that show the disconnect between the traditional view of David as this little kid who goes out to beat Goliath versus what really seems to be going on that seems to say that, no, he's already a soldier.
Kind of drawing back, Dewayne, to the broader picture of archaeological evidence for David.
One of the big questions is, are there any inscriptions that mention David? And there are a couple that do have his name. One is the Tel Dan inscription, one is the Mesha stele, or the Mesha inscription. And both of those make a reference to the house of David, the Beit David. For scholars who are extraordinarily skeptical, they dismiss this. Most scholars do not. They see this as a legitimate reference to the name of David. You have this fact of the house of David, and when they use this phrase, it was typically the name of the founder of the reigning dynasty. The Tel Dan inscription mentions this. This is an inscription probably from Hazael of Aram, Damascus, 9th century. The Mesha stele, which is an inscription from a Moabite king,
is the recognition of Israel's enemies in both of these inscriptions at a time after David is dead, recognizing his importance. Even people centuries later knew who David was. Skeptics sometimes will acknowledge a David. What does the archaeology tell us about Jerusalem? Is it a podunk cow town, or is there something else going on?
There is a considerable amount of evidence that suggests it was actually very wealthy and was even big enough to be the target of an Egyptian invasion. You've got the fact that Jerusalem has been destroyed and rebuilt so many times. There was Roman quarrying that went on, Byzantine construction that happened. What we do know, during the rule of Pharaoh Akhenaten, there is a reference, we think, to Jerusalem.
Yes.
And it is a city large enough to be the recipient of communications from the Pharaoh of Egypt. It has a king who rules over it. We know his name, Abdi-Heba. It seems to be a significant town 300 years at least before David even arrives on the scene. During the time of Solomon, an invasion by Pharaoh Shoshenq of Egypt. And what happens is Shoshenq, the first, or Shishak, biblically, goes back home, dies not long after the invasion, and his son, Osorkon I, then takes the throne. Well, one of the things Egyptian pharaohs would do when they would come back from military campaigns is they would make a donation of some of the plunder to the Egyptian temples. Osorkon I makes that donation. The records tell us that he donated 383 tons of gold and silver, which just so happened to be the largest amount ever given to the temples of ancient Egypt. When we're talking about, was Jerusalem a big wealthy city? Yes, because they were able to gather a record-breaking amount of loot.
But not far from Jerusalem, we have an administrative center that's been uncovered called Khirbet Qeiyafa. It's large. It required a strong state to build. It's from the time of David.
Its defenses were constructed out of almost 250,000 tons of stone. You had to have, a little chieftain on top of a little hill did not have the ability to construct something like this, which dates to the United Monarchy.
It's a matrix of evidence collected together, not just Jerusalem proper, but the whole large picture of the archaeology fits Kingdom of David's description in the Bible so well.
Well, we do know that comparatively speaking, Solomon's wealth was significant, but not on the par of Assyrian rulers. And we have descriptions of parties they would throw and the amount of wealth that they would get year in and year out. But we do need to keep it in perspective.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Dwayne.